Welcome back once again. Now, there's no Battlebots episode this week as Battlebots is on a 2-week hiatus, but that's not going to stop us, as Battlebots also recently came out with their live event, the Destruct-A-Thon. And after I saw some videos get uploaded, I thought I'd do a little look into this. We'll call it a review, but there's only so much that I can review out of a live event without actually going there. But I think this will give us a good look in to see what we could look forward to if we decided to go. So let's sit back, relax, and I hope you all enjoy this video. Now for this event, the teams are here, but as was pointed out by Team Scorpios in a video, this is just to see if the inaugural events will run without too much of a hitch, so this isn't going to be happening on the norm. And the robots will be driven by other people. We'll get back to the other people that'll be manning the helm there. Now first things first, we get to see a reveal of the brand new version of Donald Hudson's classic control bot, TazBot. Now TazBot is a very unique robot from Donald Hudson from back in like 1999, I believe. It's a 360 degree rotating control bot. Basically the pickaxe can lift up and down, similar to the likes of robots like Panic Attack, but with a 360 degree rotating head, makes it a very interesting thing. It fought robots like Razor back in the day, and Razor just couldn't get near. Like, TazBot was very good at holding them at bay. It stuck around until Season 5, where I think then that was the point where it finally retired. But whether it was then or in the future, TazBot eventually did retire due to age. But finally, it's back, which is quite a unique thing that I really like about the Destruct-A-Thon. You're not going there just to see the robots that are on TV, you know, like some Malice and Hypershock. You're getting to see robots that, you know, are going to be, from what I can tell, just at the Destruct-A-Thon, such as the returning TazBot. The new TazBot comes in with 6 wheels. I believe that Donald Hudson said that like 2 of the wheels is meant to be like a mini bot. I believe I remember seeing that in the same Scorpios video that I mentioned earlier. But as you can see, the robot has a lot of the stuff that made it TazBot back in the day. Sure, it's definitely different. You can see that it's got a lot of the modern stylings of robots that Donald Hudson makes nowadays. You know, the grabber lockjaw, the spinner lockjaw. You know, you can see some of that taking shape with this modern day TazBot. And honestly, that's a really cool thing to see the old and new ideologies of Donald Hudson's design philosophies just combining together for this. Now, they actually do include a video package for these robots, which I actually really like to see. For TazBot, for instance, they actually do go over how, you know, Lockjaw, while it's great, it wouldn't be here if Donald Hudson didn't start with robots like TazBot. So, yeah, I really like that. That's a really cool thing to include because, you know, not everyone's going to know about those classic days. You know, there are going to be fans who have started, maybe even with this most recent season. They also do, one for, like, robots like Kraken as well, which, my goodness, they really do a great job at selling robots like Kraken. Like, don't get me wrong, I love Kraken, but I can imagine Kraken isn't the robot that gets everyone super excited. But they make Kraken look like a robot that could win a giant nut. Like, that was brilliant. And speaking of Kraken, that is TazBot's opponent. Kraken is its old school Crusher variant, which I'm really happy to see. The Crusher variant has a lot of charm to it, even if it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Now, they interviewed the teams beforehand, and I definitely feel that these are less strategies and more just playing to the crowd for fun, as there's no real major competition at the Destruct-A-Thon, so I guess there's no real need to worry about anything besides trying to win the fight and put on a show for the people who paid to see. Now, in the opening moments, Kraken bites onto TazBot and begins breathing fire. Man, oh man, that is an exciting visual right away. I don't remember if the original Kraken, I don't think the original Kraken even breathed fire, so that's a new addition that's really fun to see. And rips off part of the wheels. I think that was the mini-bot, but it means that TazBot now is struggling to drive. Honestly, this makes for one hell of a visual, as Kraken looks like it's tearing TazBot apart, and with a flamethrower, it just makes for one hell of a destructive visual. Honestly, a very good choice for the first fight of this event. Now, TazBot's flailing around, but unfortunately it's too top-heavy to do anything anymore, as it flails around and then just keeps face-planting again and again and again. And unfortunately, whenever TazBot falls over, Kraken can't get their jaw around it. TazBot ends up being just too big. So not a lot more happens really. There's a few more bites, some flames, but that's about it really. Now this wasn't a crazy fight, but I can imagine, especially seeing the sight of Kraken tearing TazBot apart in person was an awesome sight. One thing that is also cool about Destruct-A-Thon is that the crowd are the judges. So there's no real criteria here, there's no damage, control, aggression. It's all about fan appeal. Getting the crowd involved, I think, is a really smart idea, and it just makes the show all the more entertaining for those who choose to go there. Now, of course, the fans cheer loudest for Team Kraken, who wins that fight, so that's always good to see. The next fight was between two Battlebots classics, Diablo and Overkill. Now, Diablo, I believe, is based off of El Diablo Grande, although the main robot that I imagine a lot of people recognize is El Diablo. This fun little disc spinner with tracks that I think looked really cool. Back in the Comedy Central days, it got wins over the likes of Complete Control, and, while it didn't make huge runs, I'd say that it definitely was a robot that I think a lot of people did enjoy. Honestly, it's still a pretty cool looking robot nonetheless, and Diablo looks like an amazing modernization. Now, apparently, sadly, they couldn't get the tracks to work, so it is just going to be a four-wheel drive robot. I imagine the Battlebots with its modernizations, it's maybe not as good to get the traction on with the tracks, unfortunately, so it's a bit of a shame, but there we go. But honestly, this is a very good modernization. Honestly, I could see this robot in the actual competition, on TV. I could, if someone showed me this and said that Team Diablo is bringing back that classic design and showed me that, I would believe it. That looks like a genuine, attempt to try and bring the robot back into competition. And their opponent is Overkill, a classic whackbot from the Comedy Central days, with its setup of that big wedge and then just that gigantic blade, which you might remember as being the one that Scorpios brought out for that fight, which was honestly a really cool throwback, even if it made for a less than stellar fight. Overkill, in my opinion, had a much more prominent win-loss record. It beat a lot of robots in its time, with its consistent losses being to robots like Biohazard, Voltronic, and Vlad the Impaler. To me, that shows that Overkill was a classic design that actually did pretty darn well, all things considered. But after watching, I believe it was Christian Karlberg's daughter come in with a Overkill-inspired Robot to Robo games and how that didn't do exceptionally well, I knew that it was going to be very difficult to make Overkill viable in today's day and age. Not at all impossible, but it wasn't going to be easy. Now the fight begins and Diablo immediately wedges Overkill, but doesn't get much from the first two rams. Diablo ends up getting wedged by Overkill as well, but Overkill ends up getting hit by Diablo's weapon, and so Overkill doesn't make anything of their chance to get some thwacks in. There was another massive hit which ripped the wedge right off of Overkill. That was one hell of a sight, honestly. There were some more hits causing Overkill extra damage, but Overkill is surprisingly reliable. Diablo keeps ripping bits and pieces off Overkill, and they eventually push Overkill into a wall, where Diablo ends up getting hit with the pulverizer, and I noticed the spinner isn't spinning as fast as you might expect, though I imagine this is to avoid motor burnout. Diablo seems to stop for a moment before coming back to life and pushing Overkill back into the wall. Overkill endures some more damage from Diablo, but there's not much it can do now. With no wedge, it just really can't do a lot. Then, ending the fight, there was one last hit, popping Overkill up. I think Overkill is the closest to its old school design, and you really could see that in how one-sided this fight was. Honestly, Diablo is a pretty decent machine. Like I was saying, it's probably the most competitive robot that's exclusive to the Destruct-A-Thon. Not just because it's a vertical spinner, but because it seems like a lot of thought went into how to modernize the design. The crowd of course cheers loudest for Diablo, who ends up getting the victory. Now the next segment is much more for fun, as Nightmare goes up against a slot machine. It's honestly so cool to get to see Battlebots legend Nightmare back again after so long. The fight begins and Nightmare circles around the slot machine, teasing the fans and just walking around like a predator seeking out its prey. It begins to spin up and there was a few small smacks before really just sending the slot machine up in the air, but Nightmare's on fire! What in the world happened there? Now, Nightmare thankfully seems to still be working, and they just obliterate the slot machine. They destroy the remnants as well before ending the segment, likely before something does go wrong. And shockingly, Nightmare worked the whole way through. Now, this one really showed me that the robots really aren't going full pelt, because we know that Nightmare, when it gets at full speed, it can gyro like nothing else. But as Nightmare turns around when the weapon is spinning, there's no gyro at all. This robot is very stable. And yeah, I get it, but I don't know. I'll get back to that. Next up was Malice versus Chopper. Now, Chopper is actually an all-new original robot specifically for Destruct-A-Thon, and was made by Zach Goff of Caustic Creations. It reminds me of robots like Terahertz in the fact that there's a very sturdy wedge at the front and very little armor going on in the back, but that axe is really something else. Like, clearly, this robot, while maybe not a competitive robot, it's clearly perfect for the Destruct-A-Thon, as there's a lot going on there to really just sell the appearance. Like, this is an entertaining looking robot. You got spikes on the axe shaft. The axe itself looks fun, the wheels pop out, you got these like metal pipes everywhere, which we're gonna get to those. It's honestly a really fun looking robot. And of course, we know Malice. I don't need to give a history lesson on Malice, because if you're watching the latest season of Battlebots, you've seen Malice. Now the fight begins and Chopper's tubes start firing sparklers everywhere. That makes for an awesome visual as the robot comes racing out and there's just sparks going everywhere. That's one hell of a visual, honestly. Now, in the beginning, the axe keeps firing and missing. I have to imagine the drivers actually can't see with all the sparks. But Malice does get some nice shots in. Malice seems to try and keep the spinner to Chopper's wedge, as at one point they do end up behind Chopper, but completely avoid hitting them. Again, I feel they're trying to avoid doing, like, substantial damage to the robots as they go back around to hit the wedge. Chopper actually does manage to get Malice's spinner stuck with the axe, but Malice eventually keeps going with the spinner blows. Now Chopper begins smoking a little bit as Malice keeps smacking them and pushing them into the pulverizer. At this point, Chopper's axe does seem to stop working after burning out, allowing Malice to just keep getting more and more hits in, causing more notable damage. Now Chopper does retaliate by pushing Malice into the corner, but Malice keeps going with more spinner hits. Now Malice rams into Chopper that actually gets it stuck on its backside, but Chopper tips them back over. Chopper ends up losing a wheel in the final moments from Malice's spinner. The crowd cheers loudest for Malice, who ends up getting a win, and what I felt was the loudest cheer of the entire night. That's pretty good, honestly. And then for the main event was Hypershock versus Witch Doctor, which on any regular episode, this would obviously be a main event. These are two high-powered spinners here, two recognizable modern Battlebots greats in the arena. Now, they start the fight back to back, and as the buzzer starts, they turn around as they begin spinning up. Hypershock gets the early set of hits, even ripping off one of Witch Doctor's fronts, then the other. Now, Hypershock is cautious before going in for more. Witch Doctor is still kicking, but neither robot is racing to each other. Hypershock gets another hit in knocking Witch Doctor about. After dancing around for another hit, they flip Witch Doctor over. They wait about some more before going in for another shot. Witch Doctor finally gets some small glancing blows in return, and Hypershock gets some as well. Neither robot is really smashing each other, however, which again I will get to. One smack sends Witch Doctor back, and one more hit seems to rip another bit off, though this time I think it was one of Hypershock's forks. They back away, and Hypershock gets another nice blow on Witch Doctor, and some sparks fly as the match comes to a close. The crowd cheers loudest for Hypershock, who gets the win. Now, in terms of damage, this was definitely one of the better fights in my opinion. And in the final bonus segment of this event, they end up showing the brand new Ginsu. And in the center of the arena is the frame of La Machine. Now these two robots are very important as they're made by the Battlebots co-founders themselves. La Machine is like a classic robot from the pre-TV Robot Wars days, in fact. And Ginsu, just this gigantic, kind of stupid robot, but it is fun to see a robot with, saws for wheels. I can totally see why Mr. Psycho tried to bring that kind of design back with Hit and Run. Now, this segment isn't anything crazy. it's just showing Ginsu, which is one hell of a visual, driving around. They try to explain some of the backstory to La Machine, and unfortunately, you can't hear most of it because Ginsu is making so much noise as its saws are trying to get some sort of traction on the Battlebots floor. It's not happening though, and the segment and therefore the event ends when Ginsu's wheels return from whence they came and end up getting stuck in the kill saw slots. I mean, I guess it had to happen. It happens in pretty much every episode. I guess it had to happen in the live events as well. Now, this is slightly off topic, but I'm actually really glad they still have the frame of, like, the classic La Machine, because, man, that was such a long time ago. Like, it's exceptionally rare to see any remnants from, like, the very beginnings of robot combat. You know, I've heard that the frame of Roadblock still exists. I know that Vector of Armageddon from Series 1 still exists, but, like, seeing anything from that time period is exceedingly rare, so seeing La Machine still, that is very nice. Bonus! In another event, it turns out we got to see Overkill versus Hydra. I decided to lump this in as well because I thought, hey, why not show a little bit more of what Destruct-A-Thon has to offer? Overkill comes out in this fight and is flipped around by Hydra, who easily just tosses them around. Overkill isn't even close to getting a look in. That wedge is a little too steep, and Hydra is, well, Hydra. It's pretty dang good at getting under robots. Now, we also get to see in this recording that there are screens for people who want a better look at the action. If the robots are, say, a bit too far away to get a proper look at what's happening, you can look at the screens, which will cut to the best angle possible, and that's really cool in my opinion. That definitely adds to the experience. Hydra flips Overkill onto the upper deck, who does end up getting back down, and is immediately thrown around some more. I definitely think a flipper can handle being in low power environments better, as even on low power, Hydra is a fun robot to watch as it juggles Overkill around, and they really don't have to hold back as Overkill is thrown about everywhere. Now in this one, apparently Overkill actually won from the judge's decision, showing it that in this situation the crowd does not care about judging criteria just for the fun of the fight. Right, so what are my thoughts on this? Look, okay, so we're going to go over the cons and the pros. I'm going to do the bad stuff first, and then I'm going to get into the good stuff. So my criticisms. Now, the bots are definitely holding back, which I do understand as they're trying to, like, you know, I imagine they're trying to preserve the robots because while they have spares, you know, they got like 5 of each robot from what I can tell, I can imagine that they don't want to just trash the robots every time because, you know, that would get exceedingly expensive very quickly, you know. I can't imagine that they're trying to actively lose money here, because at that point they've got to not only pay to repair the bots, but of course any damage to the arena. But I can see this being a turn-off for fans expecting the kind of action that they see on TV. With the fact that there are extras, I do hope that they begin to let loose a little bit more, because while I can understand that they don't want to go all out, I definitely think more can be done for like just big visuals for opponents, because it seems that at the moment in these beginning stages they're just a little too apprehensive about getting into the fight. Even if you just want to have Hypershock push Witch Doctor into the screws, I think that would be better than, you know, doing nothing and waiting. Now, I don't think it's enough to damn the event, however, despite my criticisms. When I was getting into robot combat again, you know, Robot was been off TV for years, which is why I stopped, you know, and I was a tiny child at the time, so I didn't pay attention. But when I decided to get back into it all those years later, I found out that there were going to be featherweights at an Insomnia event. And of course I had to see that. And when I went to watch, you know, the featherweights weren't at full power. I don't remember the reason anymore. I think it was just, you know, you imagine going to see like Lewis of the Yogs cast and, you know, you ask him where Yog Ventures went and, you know, any explanation he tries to give you is drowned out by featherweight spinners just going at Mark 9. Honestly, that'd be a better sound than any excuses that could be given about Yog Ventures, but you get the point. But I didn't care. For me, it was still fun to just watch the robots go, so just because the robots aren't going at full power, I don't think that's enough to damn them. You know, I think they just need to get a little bit more active in the ring, perhaps. I mean, the UK scene gets by without having the spinners at full power, so I definitely think that doing it like this is definitely possible. It just needs some more tweaking. I also didn't like the team interviews. I didn't mention this throughout it, but a lot of the interviews, obviously because there's no actual competition here, The competitors are all playing characters. Kraken are pirates, Chopper are bikers. It did nothing for me. I'm sure for other people, you know, that this was a lot of fun and it really added to the experience, but it did nothing for me. I don't know, I'm just, you know, I think stuff like Martin Mason works because that's a little bit of light relief amongst like a more serious competition versus lightness throughout the entire thing. I don't know, maybe I'm not making sense, but it just didn't work for me. But I think a live event with robots is always a fun experience. I will say though, on a positive note, like getting to the pros, there is still plenty to like about this. Like I was saying, getting to watch these robots live, even if they're not at full power, is still a lot of fun. It's great to see these robots in person. You know, these heavyweights are so gigantic. Like, you don't get to truly appreciate it when watching it on TV. When you get to see them in person and think, holy cow, these are that big? Like, it really does, like, blow your mind, honestly. And the fact that not only do we get to see some recognizable robots like Malice, Hypershock, Witch Doctor, but classic robots that are going to open a whole new world for fans who may not have been aware of them, you know, the likes of TazBot, Overkill, Diablo, Ginsu, like, this is good. I really like this. And original robots like Chopper, which I gotta say, Chopper is amazingly designed. Like, I gotta say, like that might be one of the smartest designed robots for this event. Like, even if it doesn't go all out, it doesn't have to because it's got so much going for just an amazing visual. If you're looking for robots to destroy each other, I can't imagine Destruct-A-Thon is going to be the event for you, as I definitely feel Battlebots aren't going to let the arena and the robots get obliterated into tiny pieces. You're not going to get to see Riptide versus Shredderator. But if you're looking to get to see some Battlebots in action, but you can't make it to the recordings of the actual TV show, I think that this is a perfectly suitable substitution. And plus, the fact that there are exclusive robots means that there is their own little appeal. I definitely think that if I was to make the decision, I would pick something else like, you know, Robo Games or the like, because I'd want to see the robots absolutely go to town on each other. But I definitely think this is a pretty good offering that I imagine is only going to get better with time. Of course, take my review with a pinch of salt, because any pros and cons I have is based off of me watching a video. But I hope you all enjoyed the video nonetheless. If you did, please be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and be sure to hit that notification bell for more. And comment, let me know what you think of the Battlebots Destruct-A-Thon. Did you go to it? Honestly, I'd love to hear your opinions about being there in the moment, as I have to imagine any feelings I have, you had to have one hell of an experience. Or even if you disliked it, tell me why. You know, I'm happy to hear both sides of the argument. But with that being said, I'll see you all next time. Bye, guys.